Well, I am thrilled to be here moderating this amazing panel today to celebrate the Judgment of Paris, the 40th anniversary. I think all these guys need a round of applause. Get those hands ready. Big round of applause for these guys. So I have had the pleasure of knowing not only Brian, but certainly Bo and his wife Heidi for over a decade. My husband and I went in and drank bourbon with them at the Kentucky Derby not too long ago. So there's some stories there as well. I've also had the pleasure of knowing Marcus Notaro and the team, of course, at Stag's Leap Wine Cellars for quite a long time. So I knew Marcus when he was up in Washington State at Col Solare. So I am thrilled. I'm just going to be the Jimmy Fallon, I guess, today. I'm going to sort of, get them all here. We're going to ask questions. The program is basically, we have people online watching us, hashtag JOP40 if anybody's tweeting or Instagramming or watching us. Hello. Please make sure that you submit some questions. We will answer questions from not only the audience, but from online folks who submit the questions. So looking forward to that. And at this point, I think we're just going to bring out Mr. Bo Barrett. Everybody. Sure what we want to do with this mic. I have to say, I was just, right from the cellar, I was coming out here and I was tweeting and getting on Instagram to promote this, and I just did autocorrect, and autocorrect changed Bo Barrett into Bo Derek. So I corrected it. I didn't leave it like that. Okay. Well, you need a glass of wine, my friend.
Capital.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit. Hang on. Let's kick off. Cheers. Well, we know that. If you don't look in the eyes, of course, we know that it's bad luck for 7 years, right? But I was just with the Italians, and they said it's bad sex for 7 years, so.
Get your
Wait
glass.
a minute. Okay.
Hurry up, get your glass. There we go.
All right, Bo.
You should try drinking whiskey with this woman.
All right, we're going to kick off and get your gray matter working and talk a lot about the history of not only the winery, but certainly the Judgment of Paris, the effect of that. Let's start a little bit with your dad, the vision, and the history of Chateau Montelena. And you have more than 2 minutes.
Okay, well, Montelena, everybody's here now. And I think it's pretty widely known as you get northern Napa Valley as a red wine district. It's a Cabernet property. And when we got here, the winery had a dirt floor. The roof had collapsed in that section up there. The roof had fallen in. And there was no winery here operational. There was a little wood building right here that Lee Passage had built in '68. But basically, there's no operating winery. Lee had licensed it as a winery, and it was operating under the name of Silverado Cellars. But the whole 100 acres was, there was about 15 acres of Zinfandel, which was usable, and about 7 of Petit Syrah, which is usable. But there was a lot of stuff called not even Grenache, but Alicante Boucher, Burgers, Sauvignon Vert. But the whole vineyard was run down. So basically, you have this, ghost winery, the empty stone building, and then 100 acres of vineyards that have to be rebuilt. But we knew from the very get-go that it was going to be a red wine property, and my dad's dream was to make it like one of the great Grand Gros of Bordeaux, whether you want to call it the Latour or Margaux. That was his dream. So to fund that, my father wasn't super wealthy. He was a real estate attorney. He'd done well, and he got his real estate partner, Ernie Hahn, and they bought it for about $1 million, but it was going to need at least $1 million more to get going. So what they did was to fund the estate Cabernet program, because we had to plant everything, and we had to build a winery. So my dad had learned about wine at UCLA at a night class. My grandparents are Irish immigrants. Well, my dad did not grow up drinking wine. He didn't really know much about wine. What he did learn was a wine appreciation class at night class at UCLA. And what he learned was the great wines of the world were red Bordeaux, the Bordeaux Chateau, the white Burgundy, a German Riesling, and then the wines of the Rhone. So he put together a team here to build Chateau Montelena. John Roleri, the vineyard manager, Mike Gergich, the original winemaker, Lee Passage, a local guy that built the shade factory next door, and basically put a team together of hired guns, really, to put it together. And we started making Riesling. There was more Riesling in Napa Valley grown in those days than Chardonnay. And there was a little bit of Chardonnay, but that's why I like our 72 Chardonnay. The 73, the one the Paris tasting, is 70% Alexander Valley, because there really is no Napa Valley Chardonnay in those days. But anyway, to finish off the story, to fund this Cabernet estate program, we have to get some cash flow wines going. So we started making Riesling, and we made, so that's a 1-year wine. Then we made Chardonnay, that's a 2-year wine. We made Zinfandel, also a 2-year wine. And it was make these wines and keep repeating the sales, and that was going to fund the estate Cabernet program, which was not designed to be successful until 1982. We're going to sell our first Cabernet. So the net result is the Paris tasting, our second Chardonnay, one of our cash flow wines out of the gate with bought fruit, from 70. 30 Napa Sonoma wins the Paris tasting. So much to our surprise, 40 years later, we're still celebrating. A wine we did to pay for the Cabernet program.
And it still is, right?
Yeah,
it still is.
Well, yeah, we don't. Well, back in the heyday of Chardonnay, we made a bunch of Chardonnay in the '80s. When of course the Paris tasting in '76, and then of course the California wine boom, and then the invent soft Chardonnay.
Set up 72. Let's talk a little bit, because you had come to the winery in '72. You'd graduated from high school, right? You're out working in the vineyards, and give us a little glimpse of what it was like here in 1972. It's very different than the wine scene than it is now.
Yeah, just a little different. There's some of the guys who were working here. I'll introduce them a little bit, but some of the guys were here in the mid-'70s were here, and it was there was the dirt parking lot here. There was a big tree, but the winery was completely overgrown. It was like a jungle. And Jade Lake actually went all the way to Tubbs Lane in those days. The moat was in front of the castle, the mosquito swamp. But it was pretty amazing place. It was really, really sleepy. Napa Valley still had a lot of walnuts growing, and a few cows were in the area too. And it was very, very exciting time. And you have to understand how in '72. Well, the second California wine boom is the post-industrial at the end of Prohibition, the end of World War II. And the center of American winemaking leaves Napa and Sonoma and moves to Modesto. Because in the early 60s, the mid-60s, the Gallows hires 6 PhDs, and California switches over from dessert wine to table wine. That's really the kind of quietest period of California wine history, is when the center of American quality wine moves to Modesto, because that's when we start drinking less fortified wine and drinking table wine. That was really started by the Gallows. So then the technology starts leaking out. Some guys from the Gallows are working at Freemark Abbey, Brad Webb, Jerry Looper. Other guys started getting out. And so they start getting up to Napa, like Dick Peterson goes to BV in '74. So you can see there's a little bit of interest in the Napa Valley to be reestablished as the fine wine headquarters, because there's really only 6 wineries in Napa that are operating big time in the 60s. The Big Five, Martini, from 33, Mondavi, Krug, that kind of stuff. So the Napa Valley is really sleepy. So when we start to show how much native excitement here, Lee Passage got the Chateau Montelena name back from Bob Trincaro for free. He said, I'm restarting Chateau Montelena, can I have the name back? And to his credit, Bob Trincaro at Sutter Home said, yeah, it belongs up there. Here it is. Take it. And that's how. And we would borrow equipment from the Raymonds. I think Gary remembers we used to go down to the Raymonds and borrow the labeler, borrow a corker. We borrowed half the stuff we did. It was all used equipment that we used in those days. So it was really an exciting time where we really, and it was the people that came in '72 were really dreamers and visionaries and fairly gutsy winery owners that allowed us the creativity to really go after this quality new standard that hadn't been set in since 1900.
Right, and you look at those guys. It was Clos Duval. It was Diamond Creek, right?
Camus, Diamond Creek, Chateau
Montelena. Wine Cellars had just ramped up.
Yeah, Clos Duval. Yeah, there's 25 new wineries started up that year in Napa and Sonoma County, and Brian said why. What happens is everybody says so. If you go to our website, why did we found Chateau Montelena in 1972? Because my dad went to school and he fell in love with the wine business. And if you go down to Clos Duval, well, they fell in love too. And over at Silverbrook, guess what? They fell in love too. Well, what happened was in 1971, there was kind of the quiet little thing. It's like I say, well, what about love? Well, how about show me the money? Because in 1971, they passed the Revenue Act, where there's a whole dollar tax credit into the wine business. So these gutsy guys, rather than investing in walnuts or pomegranates or avocados or something, they said, well, if I'm going to have to start a farm business, might as well something I can love. So, and to put it in perspective, In California in 1972, in 1971, there's 200 acres of wine grapes in California. By 1977, there's 370,000 acres in California. As I say, that's a lot of love.
A lot of love. A lot of love.
But it was a very extremely exciting time. And then you can imagine what happened, because all the fundamentals are here. The people that are doing the hard work. We were actually well capitalized. That's something that's actually not very, the Ball Shock the movie, that we were broke and skint. And we did use a lot of used equipment. We never got a new tractor until I was the boss. About 1990, I think we bought our first brand new off-shelf tractor and forklift and stuff. Because we did start. We weren't overly funded, but the thing is everything was here before the Paris Station. We had the hard-working people. We had the phenomenally good grapes growing in the sun of Napa and Sonoma County. And then we had the dream, and then we got the capital, the new barrels, the new tanks, the technology, and the guys working in the cellar actually got paid. And that man said, that's where I come in. It's like I'm 18 years old, and I just started working in the vineyard, pulling up rocks and pulling star thistle. I remember Mike Gerger said to us, Mike, we have gloves. He goes, oh, with no gloves, you have no gloves. You have gloves that will never wear out.
So
and anybody who's ever picked star thistle knows, no, they know really well that he was trying to get rid of us because we're all these fuzzy-headed surf dogs from L.A. So me and my brother Mike and Kev, we all worked in the vineyard, and it was Gerges just planning to get rid of us. But we actually worked for this guy, John Roleri, who was like the grandpa that I never had, and he taught me the nobility of work and how to have a big work ethic, and to never ever want to work in an office. Yes, stay outside and be a farmer. It's better for you. And so it was an amazing time. We all really had a great time.
So that's setting the stage for the Judgment of Paris tasting in terms of the 73 Chardonnay. And you touched on it there, that Chardonnay was like a cash crop for you. This was, I don't want to say, you didn't give it much thought. You did, but talk a little bit about that.
It was actually, again, you have to remember the standards we were going to make, white Burgundy and red Bordeaux and, Chateau Neuf de Pop. And so the standard was quite high because he'd hired a super pro winemaker, Mike Gergich, and a super pro vineyard manager, John Roleri. So when those two guys went and selected the vineyard, like the Bacigalupis, they're here today from Alexander Valley. They're around here, some of the Bacigalupi family. There we are back here. And the John Hanna vineyard in Napa. Where's the Hannas? They're around here somewhere. There he is. Bill and I had a long career together. But anyway, so when we picked out these vineyards, and you got to remember, and when I say we, I'm talking about Mike Gergich and John Roleri. I was a low level, I either had a shovel or a scrub brush, and that was the total involvement in the whole thing. I would say a cellar rat, peon, pick the lowest level you got. There was only one guy below me in the whole company, and that was my little brother.
That's how you learn. That's how you learned.
Yeah, notice how he's an airplane mechanic now. I'm not going to work for my evil older brother, that's for sure. But anyway, so we actually had very high standards, and the first Riesling we made won a double gold with Balzer in L.A. Chardonnay was doing great on the West Coast. We had won a lot of tastings, but it was really good grapes, a really good focus on detail, not being afraid of the hard work, and that's really why we weren't that surprised. Those of us, it's kind of like being on a team. When you win, if you're actually playing infield, you're not that surprised when the score ends up on your side. And that's kind of my job, I think, in the cellars, playing in the infield, the vineyard workers are the outfield. But when you actually win something, if you're in the game, you're so busy playing inning to inning that when it ends, you win, you're not that surprised because you've been involved the whole time.
There. And before we get into kind of the effect of the Judgment of Paris and all of that, that you have some people that were here, right? For that, you've got some folks to thank, I think, don't you?
Yeah, it's Chateau Montelena. You have to understand, as I made the reference, this is such a team sport.
Hang on, let me
Chateau
be Vanna White.
Hang on. We're going to put this picture up inside. This is a picture from 1978. Right after we win the Paris tasting, of course, Gergich goes down and starts his own outfit. And we were lucky enough to hire a guy who had two wines in the Paris tasting. Jerry Looper out of Fremont Abbey had both a Cabernet and a Chardonnay. So my dad's lucky enough to hire Looper, comes back from Europe. So this is Jerry Looper right here. Robert Lyons, one of the first wineries in Maryland. That's Bo Barrett right there when he still had hair. This is Tim Johnson, Steve Spurrier's neighbor in Paris. He's a British dude that Steve, and he was a buddy of Jerry's from Paris, and Steven Spurrier. This is 78, and that's Gary Galleron. He's here today right here, 78. So our 70s guys. And Gerard, he's a 70s guy too. The crew that worked here back in the olden days. Get up there, Gerard. Come on.
A round of applause for these guys.
Yeah. And in between them, I was saying, and also we got to sell. Let's go on with my baseball metaphor, because what we really need is important is people who actually sell tickets for us and put butts in seats so we can all get paid. There's Kathleen Meek, and I'm sure there's other former Chateau Montelena sales guys here. Kathleen's here, stuff like that. All right. And along with the other growers, I saw Guinness is over here too. So our unsung heroes of the wine business, all the wine guys like me, get all the glory and the fame, and they get your picture taken with senators, which is kind of dodgy. But our growers that grow grapes for us too, is we grow a lot, but our growers are here too. So I'd like to give a shout out to our grower crew with Guinness and the other guys.
Should they stand up? Are the growers here? Can we stand up?
Any growers from Chateau Montelena, stand up.
Love?
There's Bill, there's Guinness, some of the guys. Oh, I guess I should stand up too.
Yep, stand up. Stand up. All right, we got more standing up. Yeah, the unsung heroes. That's right. All right, so the stage is set. And again, we'll take questions from you guys in the Q&A period. The stage is set for the Judgment of Paris. And Steven Spurrier, of course, you all know the story. We've heard a lot about it. He had tasted some California wine, he and Patricia, his partner at l'Académie de Vin in Paris, and really wanted to showcase some beautiful, beautiful wines. And so conceived this idea. Of course, Stephen owned a wine shop, so I'm sure there was selling some wine involved in there as well. But I've heard him speak about it, and it's really interesting when he said, I really wanted to showcase these wines, but was nervous about the French judges, being these big name French judges, Albert de Valaine as well, from Romanée Conti as well. So lots of big names were coming in to judge these wines, but he thought, let me just do it as a blind tasting, and let me throw in iconic French wines, because if they think of California, they'll just think of it as somewhere above Mexico. They don't have a frame of reference really at that point in '76 to taste California wines. So that was the genesis of it, and it's amazing what happened.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. I think all the stars aligned, because if you think of how it could have never happened, Stephen didn't change, or Joanne Dupuis didn't get the wine over there, or the judges, or only one of the wines went. Like we win the Chardonnay and the French one. So having everything aligned, and as Warren Winiarski says, a Copernican moment. He says that's when it flipped over. I was, dumb, and I don't know astrology. I thought it was when all the planets lined up. But there was definitely a magic time, and it was how it all happened. It was supposed to happen. The Lord works in mysterious ways. There are so many ways that it should not have happened, but honestly, and we've all seen Bull Durham and stuff. Well, we were there on the right time with the right wine and the right day, and the wind blew our direction. It was awesome.
But it's true, because if George Tabor hadn't been there from Time Magazine,
exactly, yeah.
Nobody would have been there to record it and talk about it and give it validity in the press. So it really was the stars aligning.
It's what George and I and Stephen, we've been working together for the last 2 months, and all of us, I had very little to do with the whole thing, but I can report, I was a low-level guy. I was involved in a nominal sense. I was just one of the peons, crushing grapes and bottling, but I was there, and I remember very distinctly. And by 1996, the Paris tasting was a thing, really kind of a bit of dim, distant part of history. And now that 40 years later, it's getting to be such a big deal. And I think actually part of the whole deal is that we're now getting to the part where prohibition should be ending. Like the American wine industry is now, dominating in so many factors with sustainability and our agriculture and our precision farming and our chemical-free farming and the fish-friendly and solar and all that stuff. Where our leadership and quality and everything, and I hate to say this, but I'm from here, and yes, I'm going to root for the home team. But the leadership of Napa Valley and those particular aspects of quality, sustainability, working with the planet, marketing, hospitality, everything, the rest of the world looks up to us, and it all started with quality. And I think that's a really important thing that all of us need to keep focused on. Is like, don't be complacent, stay focused, stay in the game, and keep working on making better and better wine all the time in a more responsible fashion. refreshing because what people want in the modern world is honesty, and I think that's what we give them here is like really, truly honest products. Product of the land and the light and hardworking people, and I think that's part of the success of Napa Valley, and I think that's where we're going as we go forward.
And I would agree with you. Yes, you can clap. You can clap. He's running for the mayor of Calistoga next. Sorry, Chris. Where are you? No.
I live in the county, so it's not a problem, Chris.
I want to talk a little bit more about the effect that the immediate effect, as you remember, that the 76 Paris tasting win had on the winery, on you personally, on Napa Valley.
Yeah, I'll have to go back to what I was told by my dad and stuff, because, again, I was the lower level guy, and I actually never tried to sell any wine. But the story was in those days that you had to build a relationship. So California wine is doing really quite strong in San Diego, L.A., San Francisco. We're doing well on the West Coast, thanks to Robert Balzer, Finnegan in San Francisco. So American wine is doing well. And we do establish relationships with a few. Stephen Hirsch is here. His dad was one of the early guys to come out and look at these great wines being made in California. But in the rest of the country, there's really only 2 or 3 distributors that were picking up the California wine. So it was actually quite difficult for us to get national distribution. And that's the thing that changed overnight. Instantly, hey, where can I get these wines that were in the Paris tasting? And then, what's happening in Napa and a whole bunch of other distributors through the country come out. And we just established relationships. So basically it helped Napa Valley, and I think by extension the Sonoma County guys and Ridge and stuff like that. Because, there wasn't, you got to remember the Napa Valley, Ridge is in there. So it's not only Napa Valley.
Right. I had the list of actually what was selected by order. So for the whites, it was Montelena, then a Merceau Charme from Rouleau, Chalone, Spring Mountain, a Clos de Mouche from Drouin, Freemark Abbey, Batard Montrachet, Pouilly Montrachet from La Fleuve, Vidercrest, and David Bruce. Those were the Chardonnays.
Yeah, so
in that order.
Again, so David Bruce, they're from down south too. So it was nobody really knew that the Napa and Sonoma. I think by 1900 the leadership in Napa and Sonoma was well established, but it had to be redone again. That circles back to my prohibition argument. Is that I think that the net result of the Paris tasting is we skipped one generation. I think we would have got where we are eventually, but it would be another 15 years or something. It's almost skipped one generation. So we basically got rid of prohibition at about 66 years, 1932, 1976. That's 2 generations if you do the math. Instead of 100 years, it took 65, 70 years. But I think that at 100 years at the end of prohibition, I just think the light's too good, the land's too good, and the people work too hard. And that's why I think that we did. But I did it. It gave us a huge jump start. And it was, the main thing, it was so good for consumers around the world because everybody got involved in the quality racket. It's all about quality. It's all about competitiveness, because I don't really worry about what they're doing over in France. I worry about what Doug Schaefer's doing.
But it was a huge, as you said, boon for the California wine industry in general. The Napa, obviously, Napa Valley certainly, and in terms of the legacy it's left, what do you think? I know you were just with Stephen and some folks that were involved at the beginning. How do they feel about their legacy with this tasting?
I think we're all a little surprised by the legs it's had, and that it's a bigger deal now than it was 10 years ago. That the 30th anniversary is pale in comparison to the 40th, and it's like, man, hopefully I'm here for the 50th. It should be a really damn big deal. I don't know.
I want to be in on that party.
I'm only 62, so I'll probably make that one. We'll keep drinking wine. Like Pete Mondavie, you made it to 102. So there's no question drinking wine is good for you. You see these old guys around here, But yeah, the legacy I think is important. But I think the legacy is that the meritocracy of wine. I think that leveled the playing field, and that anybody can get in the game now if you work hard enough, have a good vineyard, that you can do it. So I think the legacy is it's been good. I suppose the first thing is most importantly it was good for the consumers, that it made better wine more common, and the competitiveness was really healthy for everybody. And I think that the end beneficiary of it was the wine drinker of American wines in particular. But when the Americans, it's like, well, the Oregon guys said, well, hell, if Napa Valley can do it, we do it. The Chileans say the same thing, the Aussies, and I think that Warren will say the same thing. Is that it basically elevated quality wine around the world. And where anytime as a good American, I say you can crush aristocracy with a meritocracy. That's a good thing.
And on that note, I think we give Bo a round of applause. All right, I'm going to keep him up on stage, have him scooch down like Jimmy Fallon here. We'll scooch down. I'm going to make you guys do beer pong at the end of this like Jimmy does. And where is Marcus Notaro? Here. Maybe I should move this. Yeah, this. Marcus, are you here? Right behind you. Come on up. Everybody, round of applause for Marcus Notaro. Okay. Have a seat in the hot seat here. Okay. This thing is really moving. Sorry. All right. You got a glass of wine, Marcus?
Yeah, is this yours, Bo, or is this my glass of wine?
Hang on.
All right.
That's yours. He brought his over.
Oh, fantastic.
All right. So we're going to do this
Cheers.
with everybody. Cheers. A toast. Got to look in your eyes. Okay. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to be at Stag's Leap Wine Cellars, because I've known you, as I mentioned earlier, from Col Solare up in Washington State, and you're certainly, to me, when I think of you, I think of elegant Cabernet-based wines. That's what you've done. So just talk a little bit about you and how you got to Stag's Leap Wine Cellars.
You bet. I mean, my real inspiration for wine came from my father. Of course, we're Italian. Notaro's got lots of vowels in it. And my dad, he used to make wine for the house. Although it wasn't elegant Cabernet, it was full-on Zen. And although even as a kid, I mean, I didn't necessarily, like his wine. I mean, it was okay. But what I really loved about it was being at the table. My dad, he would have his friends over. There'd always be a bottle of wine. And even as a kid, I kind of liked the conversation. And people were talking about it. And people were having fun. And it was really, really interesting. So that probably was my first inspiration. And then the second one was just trying to get through college. I worked as a waiter in an Italian restaurant. And the owner of this place, he's from Puglia. And every night, he wanted us to learn about wine. So I got to taste great wines from California, from Italy, all over the world. And I'm like, wow, this is really fascinating. And it goes with food. And it's really cool.
And I'm a poor college student. I get to drink it.
Exactly, and take home the partial bottles. So there came a point after I graduated from school that I kind of had three ways to go. I had an engineering degree, and I could have gotten a job working in downtown Seattle, another job working in sales for wine, and another job came open working in the lab at a winery in Eastern Washington. And I'm like, I love wine. This is what my passion is. Maybe I could fall back on the engineering degree if it doesn't work out. So I moved over to Eastern Washington and started working at Columbia Crest Winery for Doug Gore and Ray Einberger. Ray, in particular, at the time, had just moved up from Opus One, where he was the cellar master. And he grabbed me under his wing, and I worked together with Ray for about 10 years before being asked to work on Col Solare, which is a joint venture between Chateau Saint Michel and Piero Antinori from Tuscany. And then a little over 3 years ago, the winemaking position at Stag's Leap Wine Cellars came open. And I have 3 little kids. They were 3 years younger at the time. And I'm like, that is a fantastic Cabernet place. The style of the wines matches what I like to work with. They're ageable styles. And I asked if I could go.
Was there a little bit of trepidation as you're going to this iconic winery? Was it a dream? Was it something when you saw it you went, wow, this is the ultimate when you're making Cabernet Sauvignon?
Leslie, when I first came down, and even today, even yesterday actually, when you walk out into our vineyards of Fay and, of course, the historic SLV, that area just has this magic to it. The way the weather works there, the soil, it has a feel that it just, you love it.
Have you all been down to Stag's Leap Wine Cellars? Yeah? And seen that, so you know the beauty when we're just describing it. We're going to drink some later, right? We're going to drink some of that.
Okay.
So talk a little bit about the history when you came into it and the legacy of the Paris tasting for Stag's Leap.
Well, sure. I mean, the Paris tasting for Stag's Leap Wine Cellars, it's actually been really fun, particularly this year, to hear the stories, and particularly from our founder, Warren Wynarski, who has very vivid recollections of what was happening at the time. And for him, Napa Valley, he felt that there was almost a bit of a glass ceiling, in the wine world in terms of producing wine quality. And the Paris tasting is what broke that and really was a great inspiration to a number of California winemakers. A couple of fun stories, though, that he shared, from the tasting. When he found out about it, his wife, Barbara, had called to him. He was in Chicago and said that, and Barbara had mentioned to Warren that, we won a tasting in Paris. And he didn't really recollect which tasting it was, so his response was, well, that's very nice, and hung up the phone. And then it was a few days later, once he realized who the tasters were and what the other wines were, that he frantically tried to buy back as much of the 73 Cabernet Sauvignon as he could, when he recognized what the significance of that particular tasting was going to be, and certainly was.
Well, and I have a list of those. It was, and in the order, of course, that they were ranked. Stag's Leap Wine Cellar, 73. Mouton, 70. Montrose, 70. Aubryon, 70. Ridge Montebello, 71. Léoville Lascas, 71. Heights Martha's Vineyard, 70. Clos de Val, 72. Mayacamas, 71. And Freemark Abbey, 69. So some stellar names in that group.
Yes, we should try them.
I think you have, didn't you have the 73 recently?
Yes, we did, actually. I don't know how many of you folks might have been participating in Flavor Napa Valley, maybe about a month ago or so, but Matt Crafton and I had done a seminar before the dinner. Part of it was about the Judgment of Paris, right? And during the dinner, all the different California wineries that were part of the Paris tasting had a wine and a course as part of the grand dinner. But we had done a seminar beforehand where we had done mini verticals of our wines, and one of the folks that had attended the seminar came up to me afterward, and they're like, hey, Marcus, are you going to be at dinner tonight? And I'm like, yes, of course. And he's like, well, I have 2 bottles of the 73 SLV, and I brought one tonight because I couldn't think of a more appropriate occasion to open it. So would you open the bottle for me? And of course, I'm like, yeah. But I
Open the bottle for you and not get a glass?
Well, I was wondering about whether that. But actually, the most nervous, only thing I could think about at that point, I'm like, I'm going to sink this cork, right? It's a 40-year-old bottle of wine. I'm going to use an Osso, and there's going to be all these people there, and I'm going to sink this thing. But anyway, the time came, and it was really neat. He had his whole family there. It was obviously a really big deal for these guests. The cork didn't sink. It actually was in great condition. I did get to try some. A lot of folks did.
And how was it?
It was, SLV is a special vineyard, and I think what makes a great vineyard really special is if you can see some of the characteristics in the young wines, in the old wines. And when we poured that 73 SLV, it had this nice cedar spice, this little bit of black currant, which is something that we get from the young wines. The taste, it still had great vibrancy, actually had pretty good color. And the freshness of it, though, particularly on the palate, we enjoyed it. I tried to keep it, right, to see how long this was going to go. And I lasted about an hour before my last gulp was down, but quite enjoyable.
And Bo, have you tasted the 73 recently, the Montelena?
Hello. No, yeah. Well, recently, let's see, 4 decades, define recent. When my father died, of course, we drank one, and we had one, and so that was 2013, so that's the last one I had. The winery only has 10 left that we use for auction, so we had one from one of our growers, and one of my dad's great long-term friends brought one to the celebration, and we spread the bottle through about 50 people. It was awesome. But it was it's a remarkable bottle of wine. It was super reductive, so it was pretty fresh and bright, and so it's kind of a tender time. It's like, what better time than at the old man's wake? It was awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's fantastic. Yeah. To Jim. All right, so we've talked a lot about the past, and we've talked a lot about the effect that it's had on both wineries. Talk a little bit about Stag's Leap's future.
Well,
It's in your hands. No pressure.
No pressure, right? Again, fortunately, I mean, the Stag's Leap Wine Cellars, our vineyards are in a truly remarkable spot for Cabernet Sauvignon. SLV produces a wine that's very distinct from Fay. Both these vineyards are right next to each other. They both have this kind of style that has this kind of soft power, but each vineyard really has its own personality to it. The Fay Vineyard Cabernet has this perfumey spice and red fruit. SLV's got this darker fruit, this cocoa powder, and I think even from the beginning, Mr. Winarski, his idea was to produce not only great quality, but to produce wines that show the identity of this special place. And that is my top priority in going forward. And obviously, wineries do evolve. Stag's Leap Wine Cellars, when it was first built in the early 70s, was a very state-of-the-art type cellar with cold fermentation and malolactic and barrels and things like that. And every winemaker, we all have our own ideas, and I do things with Fay and SLV, whether it be yeast or barrels or fermentation regimes, to try to not only make those wines to be great quality, that they have great longevity, but they maintain that personality that comes from the vineyard area.
All right, thank you. Round of applause for Marcus. He's staying up here on stage. You can scooch over. I'll have you scooch down there. We'll have you switch. And I'm going to have Matt Crafton. Matt, are you here? Are you coming from behind the stage? Chateau Montelena's winemaker, the new genre. Matt, come on out. Where are you, Matt? Everybody, Matt Crafton. Round of applause. There we go. I feel like a dating show almost. I should be saying 6'2".
Did I hear Bo Derek is here?
You're never going to let him live that one down. I can see the little more face on, an emoji now. All right, so we've been talking about the past. We've been touching now on the future. Talk a little bit about your background. Same question sort of that I asked of Marcus, background, and then stepping into this legacy of winemaker here at Chateau Montelena.
My background. Well, first off, thanks to everyone for being here. I see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of history, and unfortunately, most of you have heard my bad jokes, so I can't use those today. But anyways, I've been in the industry now for almost 15 years, and I'm a Virginian by birth and by blood, and we just came back from a wonderful trip in Washington, D.C., and we definitely painted the town Montelena green, which is fantastic. But I started off at the very bottom. I dragged hoses. I started off in the Virginia wine industry. I have an economics degree from the University of Virginia, and I still remember my very first job. I worked for a 60,000 case winery in Virginia, which was the biggest at the time. We made these like $5 or $6 cheap and cheerful semi-sweet blends, and I was all excited about what I was doing, and we had this one wine. It was called the James River White, and it was like 6 grams of sugar in there, and it was fantastic. And
On a hot Virginia day.
And I remember pouring it one day. It was like my third day of work, and this guy comes up to me and tastes it and goes, oh, man, he's like, this tastes like it came out of the James River.
So you put that on your resume, didn't you?
Without a doubt. And so after making my way out to California and working out here, went to grad school at UC Davis, and then Bo and Cam's here somewhere, wherever Cam is. There he is, Cam. They hired me, and it was kind of a Dread Pirate Roberts kind of moment. They said, well, we'll hire you for a year, and it's kind of a one-year position, and then we'll probably fire you. And I said, sweet, I've got a job for a year. All right. So it's going on 8 years now. So it's been a great ride, and I can't imagine working with better people.
Did you feel when you came in, especially with Bo here, any pressure or was it just sort of an ease into it?
No pressure at all.
For the next Judgment of Paris, right?
Well, it's a tremendous responsibility. I mean, look at this place. I walk past this building every morning. I mean, it's iconic. I mean, our mandate is to be the American first growth, and to do that, you have to understand the history, everything that's got us here or brought us to this point, and then also have the creativity and the drive to continue to improve. And thankfully, I've got a tremendous mentor and Bo and Dave and Brian and John, and I have the best cellar crew in the valley. I'm sure they're diligently working wherever they are. So it's it's a real blessing, and I think that being able to say that that we didn't make the best wine we've ever made in 1973, and that our best years are still ahead of us. I mean, it's amazing to be part of something like that.
And you're really helping to drive that with your focus on sustainability. So maybe if we want to touch on that, just where you're headed with that.
Sure. So it's sustainability is a big part of who we are. It's been in our DNA since the very beginning, and it's, I think, pertinent today, where a lot of what's old is new again. And when I first came here in 2008, talking to Dave, I think, and talking to Bo about releasing the ladybugs in the vineyards and composting, and it's always been in the lifeblood of Montelena, but it's never really anything we've talked about, or it's never anything we've really boasted about, because what we do, the green business practices, if you will, are just generally good business practices, and it's who we are. And if you have a chance to ever check out our brand video, there's an amazing shot of Dave and Bo in their short shorts and tank tops running around in the 80s. And,
Not sure I want to see that.
Yeah. It's usually pretty popular, actually.
It's kind of a Siegfried and Roy thing. He had to have been there.
But I think it belies literally everything that we do, from the solar panels all the way down to composting our coffee grounds. Everything we do, we're looking to take care of this wonderful planet that we have in our vineyards. Our vineyards and our ground and our people are our two most important assets. And without those two things, we couldn't be successful in what we do.
Fantastic. Well, I know we're going to go to some audience. Yes, round of applause for Matt. Woo! Before we go to audience questions, I'm going to ask you guys before the beer pong one quick question. You've worked all over the world. We've been all over the world. What makes Napa Valley such an amazing place? And I'll start with you, Marcus.
Is one working here?
Yep.
It is? Okay.
Do you need mine? You good?
I think it's on. Yeah, it's on. I mean, for me, in being other spots, the diversity here in such a small place just blows me away. The valley is so small and has so much different characteristics. Even just talking about one variety, Cabernet Sauvignon, depending on where you are, what side of the valley, what the soils are like. I mean, it's you can never get bored here. It is so not only stunningly beautiful, but stunningly diverse, and makes it a lot of fun.
All right, and Matt, from Virginia to Napa.
This is the best of the best. This is the best soil, the best climate, the best people. This is a competitive place. We're constantly being pushed to get better, and I think that's one of the legacies of the Judgment of Paris, is that this is really the ultimate meritocracy, this industry, where great wine sells and good wine may or may not. And so I think when you're in an atmosphere like this, where everybody's pushing to do their absolute best and recruiting the best and trying new things and innovating, there's no other place in the world like this because of that.
All right, and Bo, bring it home.
Those guys stole my best bit, so I'm going to say the people that make it happen. Wine is a people thing. It's, God gave us wine to make our lives a little bit more enjoyable. And you think about Marcus, Matt, my job, our job, we're not curing cancer. We're not sending people to Mars. We're just making people a little bit more happy, one glass at a time. And I think it's the people that make it happen.
Woo! I couldn't have picked a better way to wrap up that panel. All right, guys, we've got a microphone right here, and we're hoping that we have some questions from this remarkable audience. Who would like to be first? Anybody?
Hey, I was wondering, in 1972, how well known was Napa Valley as a wine growing region, and how well mapped out was it? Was this estate here known to be just prime territory for cab?
Yeah, there's a letter upstairs. If you go upstairs this afternoon, there's a letter from Alfred Tubbs to his winemaker at the time. Send more red. It's more popular now, from 1890. So this was an extremely well-known. By 1893, I believe Chateau Montelena was the fourth largest winery in Napa Valley. It was bigger than Behringer Brothers. So this is in Napa Valley, and so how well developed Napa was. There were 3 AVAs, well, not even AVAs, but there were 3 districts. There's the St. Helena, Calistoga, and Napa in general. So the one by 1900, the Napa Valley wine business is actually fairly well established and doing really quite well and winning medals in Europe. So it's the history here is actually quite big. So if you look at Farniente, Montelena, Behringer, you know those old ghost wineries that have been restored over the decades. Yeah, we're really the third wave, not even the second wave was Modesto. Like I said, the first wave was after Prohibition, 1890, when Alfred Tubbs built this one in 1886.
Fantastic. Yeah. Brian, I think, has the mic.
Very quick. Is this on?
As a geologist, I can't resist asking about the importance of terroir. You mentioned a little bit about climate and the soil, but how much variety is there locally here in the terroir and the degree to which that controls the quality, if assuming you believe in terroir, as some winemakers don't?
Boy, we're going to be here for about another hour.
All right. Stand by next week for a full seminar. Okay, we're gonna go as fast as we can.
We'll start with Marcus. Yeah, go as fast as you
Marcus,
can.
go.
I mean, for us, we have a great example of where the soil makes a difference, because the Fay Vineyard, Fay and SLV are right next to each other, okay? The Fay Vineyard, though, was planted on alluvial soil that was deposited from a creek that rolls through the Stag's Leap District. So the soil has more gray color, a little bit clumpier, a little bit more clay in it. The SLV vineyard is planted in volcanic soil. So it's been washed down from the Palisades, this rock formation that's up above our vineyards. So it's very young, it's red, it's more powdery, it's got a lot more rock in it. And again, the personality of those 2 vineyards are very, very distinct. The weather's the same. Fay has got perfume, red fruit. SLV has got dark fruit and cocoa.
I find Fay one of the most magnificent wines. It's just so distinct and unique. Okay, Matt?
I think all you have to do is look at the Valca Mountains to the east and the Mayacamas in the west when you're driving up valley, and you can just see how different the formations are. Jonathan Swinshat wrote a great book called The Winemaker's Dance that I think touches on this much better than we can do right now. But without a doubt, that's one of the amazing things about this valley. It was like God had ADD when he made this place. I mean, it was literally every soil type known to man is here in one form or another.
And then the last thing here is, if you know about Napa Valley as it's evolved over the years, there's the mountain appellations, I know the mountains around Howell Mountain, all that stuff. And then there's the valley floor, the township appellations. And in between, from 400 feet, because the mountain appellations start at 400 feet on the west side. But Calistoga at Bale Lane starts at about 350 feet. So the thing is that Calistoga, as its unique place, farms an extension of the mountain. So it's the most unusual place in Napa Valley is that it farms like a mountain vineyard, but it's flat like the valley floor. So it's kind of in between the two. And that's what's the most unusual about Napa Valley. But echoing off of what Marcus said is that Napa Valley has the alluvial, the volcanics, and the sedimentary. And that's all the interplay. And that's part of the amazing thing about Napa Valley. And you can't forget, we have one serious advantage over the rest of the world, and that's the light. We have the cold Pacific Ocean and hot days and cold nights, and it's no place like Montelena. We have a diurnal temperature shift of 50. I'm sure Fay's probably got 40 at the foot of Stag's Leap. But that daytime heat to cook out the veg and that nighttime cold to keep in the bright fruit, that's something that Napa that nobody else has. Where Sonoma, Alex, you don't only have to go 15 miles to find where 100 degrees in the day and 50 at night. That's the magic that happens in Napa.
Well, thank you, guys. I know that you had a question we're going to get to. You can hit these guys a little bit later, but thank you. Round of applause for our entire panel. And I'm going to have Mayor Canning, where's Chris? Come on back up. We have something important to do, I believe.
Thank you. Well, I was going to present this to Bo, but since I heard he's running for mayor, so we'll give this to you. All right, you've been through this before. This is an official proclamation. There will be a lot of whereas and therefores. So we're going to count the whereases out loud, okay? So this is, hey, that's a great idea. So, City of Calistoga proclamation, 40th anniversary of Chateau Montelena's Judgment of Paris Day. Whereas, on May 24th, 1976, Chateau Montelena Winery helped put California at the forefront of the wine world by winning the legendary wine tasting with its 1973 Chardonnay at the International Paris Hotel organized by British wine merchant Stephen Spurrier, known today as the Judgment of Paris. And whereas, I'm losing you guys. The city of Calistoga, the Napa Valley, California, and the world owe the founders of Chateau Montelena Winery, Mr. Jim Barrett, Mr. Ernie Hahn, and Mr. Lee Passage, a debt of gratitude for the courage to match Napa Valley wines against those of France. And whereas, you guys are good. The results of the tasting rated a Chateau Montelena Chardonnay in first place in the white category and Stag's Leap Wine Cellars Cabernet Sauvignon in first place in the red category. And whereas, it's the last one, you're okay. Whereas Chateau Montelena Winery and the Barrett family have been an important part of the fabric of Calistoga community with significant contributions to our local culture, pride, economic development, social development for the last 4 decades. Now, the official part, I put on my mayor voice. Therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Chris Canning, Mayor of the City of Calistoga, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, May 24th, 2016, as Chateau Montelena's Judgment of Paris Day, and ask all citizens of Calistoga to join in the observation, celebration, and congratulations, signed and sealed this 24th day in the year 2016. Congratulations.
Fantastic. Well, I think there's nothing more to be said. Sorry, Brian's going to close this out. Get in here.
So I just want to thank the panel, thank all of you for being here. And one last quick note. How many of you have seen a silly little film called Bottle Shock? So I thought it would be appropriate to mention the 5 great lies of Bottle Shock. Because you know the movie Bottle Shock was 85% Hollywood, 15% true. In fact, the 15% is the Barrett family. It is Chateau Montelena. We did win. And Gustavo Brambilla, who is here today, was actually there at the time. So he is one of the only few true things. Lie number 1. The wine never turned brown. The wine turned pink. And the reason the wine turned brown was in the movie, they were filming through that door, and the camera couldn't read the color, so they kept adding dye. And suddenly they had a brown bottle. Lie number 2, there was no boxing ring. Lie number 3, there was no hot bartender in Calistoga hustling locals with Bo Barrett and his friends. Okay? Gus! I'll speak for Bo. Lie number 4, the wine was never passed out at an airport to happy Germans who wanted to beat the French again. The wine was taken by Joanne Dupuis, who is here today on, ladies and gentlemen, the wine tour, not the tennis tour. She had the Chelachev tour. She is here today. She's the reason the wine got there. And last but not least, and gentlemen, I hope you are not disappointed, there was no good-looking intern named Sam. She was made up by the producers because the producers said you need romantic tension in a romantic comedy. And that concludes our program today. Any final thoughts, Mr. Barrett? Oh, yes, that's right.
I'm going to put this one in, but actually the California State Legislature, the Assembly has a resolution too, and it's signed by our Assemblyman Bill Dodd and Lois Walk for our district here. But this has another one of the whereases one, but it's going to be, again, you guys don't understand. It's like, I gave a talk at the Smithsonian. This is at our bottles in the Smithsonian, the bottles that we worked on. Like, I was just a lowly cellar worker. You know, I crushed the grapes, I filled the barrels, I filled the bottles, but it's in the same building as the Star Spangled Banner. So these things actually mean a lot to us because when we get these, it's not just something. It's like we actually think that we did something as part of American history. And all of us that participated, the crew from the old days, Gary was here and we went tasting, Gus too, we went Paris tastings, and we had no idea what we were doing in those days, but as Americans who all we did was work hard and have a dream, it's amazing to have someone at the Smithsonian Institution, and so all the guys that worked on it. If you go look at the history pictures in there tonight, there's Rome Steinecke, our cellar worker, my boss in 1973. His picture's on there on a bottle of wine, so check out our history thing. But all of us here, on behalf of Montelena and my crew, it's amazing, and thanks for coming out. We know you're busy, but we appreciate it. But it's I actually cried at the Smithsonian, so you can imagine that. So it was pretty cool.
Thank you all.